Right, yeah, I've been wanting to do this one for a while. This is Chilling Scares, a bit different from Nukes, but this is YouTube channels that got abandoned for disturbing reasons, which could be my channel one day. You never know if I get murdered or something. But yeah, let's see what this is saying. I don't know how many this is either. It might just be two stories, but we'll break it into two if it is just two. But anyway, let's go.
Elliot Eastman was a 26-year-old man from Vermont, USA. He spent most of his early years in the tiny town of Heinsberg. Life there was calm and peaceful, but with a population of less than 600 residents, it was also quite boring. Elliot wanted to do something more with his life. So, with his love for nature and exploration in mind, he saved up some money and traveled to the Philippines near the end of 2023. He wanted to slowly make his way through the entire country and witness its beauty firsthand. But just a couple months into his trip, he met a local woman named Carisha Jayla. The two started dating and got married just a few months after that in July of 2023. Then in January 2024, Elliot started posting videos on YouTube documenting his life in the Philippines with his wife. His videos were simple, without any over-the-top music or crazy editing effects, but they felt authentic and real, allowing him to amass a small but dedicated fan base. Though his content took a massive shift in May 2024 when he decided to move to the beachside village his wife was from in the Cebuco municipality. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before this spiraled into the worst decision he'd ever make. You see, Cebuco is part of what's known as the Red Zone in the Philippines. Put simply, this is the most dangerous section of the country, especially for foreigners. Armed robberies, kidnappings, and even murders are not uncommon in this region, with over 40 Westerners going missing there in just the last decade. However, Elliot was well aware of this fact, as evident from his channel's description, which read, "I'm Elliot Eastman. I am 26 years old and I came to the Philippines about a year and a half ago, where I met the love of my life deep in the mountains of the Red Zone of the Philippines. I will be showing you my day-to-day life as the first and only foreigner to have ever lived here in Cebuco for a long period of time." He mentioned the danger in some of his video titles as well. But despite the threat to his life, he still wanted to build a life in Cebuco. So he rented an apartment and even built his own grocery shop near the beach, all while documenting the entirety of his journey on YouTube. Now, there were times when he felt threatened and had to hide from some locals to avoid getting in serious trouble. But despite the somewhat dire circumstances, Elliot was enjoying his time in Cebuco and slowly building the life he wanted. However, just when things were starting to look up for Elliot, tragedy struck. The incident took place on the night of October 17th, 2024, when, after doing several short live streams throughout the day, Elliot went offline and sat for dinner with his wife and her parents. But then, a few minutes later, 4 men with guns barged into their home and started telling Elliot to go outside. These men were also wearing outfits similar to those of the Filipino police, likely in hopes of making Elliot more cooperative. Elliot, however, saw through their disguise and tried to run away. Unfortunately, that's when things went from bad to worse. One of them opened fire and ended up shooting Elliot twice, once in the leg and once in the abdomen. They then dragged him onto the speedboat they had docked near their home and sped off into the darkness. This was the last time anyone saw Elliot alive. By the time the police launched a search and rescue mission, the kidnapper's boat was nowhere to be found. The investigation then went on for nearly a month until the 12th of November. But when the police eventually located the kidnappers, they were forced into a shootout, resulting in 3 of the 4 culprits losing their lives. And while they did manage to arrest the last kidnapper, it was already too late. According to the kidnapper, Elliot succumbed to his injuries when he was on the speedboat. So the kidnappers simply threw his body overboard to hide the primary evidence of their crime. Unfortunately, the police were unable to locate his remains and pronounced him officially dead in December of 2024. However, one question still remained unanswered. Why? Why did these 4 criminals target Elliot? Well, the simplest explanation is also the most likely one. They just wanted to kidnap him for ransom. Carisha even had a first-hand experience with this, as back in high school, one of her Canadian classmates was kidnapped and held for a ransom of $50,000 US. That said, there's also a second potential explanation that has to do with Elliot's side business. You see, while operating his grocery store, Elliot also started lending the locals money for 20% interest. A local loan shark likely saw him as a competitor and sought to eliminate Elliot before he took away any more of his business. This would also explain why the intruders were so quick to open fire if they wanted to hold him for ransom. Regardless of their motive, the end result was the loss of a young man trying to make a life for himself with his wife in a foreign land. His YouTube channel now sits abandoned, with its many uploads remaining as proof as the life he once lived.
Is it just me? Or is he just a moron? Like, what? How much do you think that girl, I mean, they seem to have been together for a while, but how much that girl might have something behind it, too? That some Canadian she knew also went to live there and ended up getting kidnapped for ransom money. But that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's not the most disturbing reason. It's the most dumbest. But why would they do it? Because they come from an area that they have nothing. You're someone who just bowls in there with money. What do you think's going to happen? And the fact that he was so, like, I could understand if he just went, had no idea, but he knew. Moron.
Ben Pardoon, known online as Warner the Goobermeister, was a comedian creator on YouTube who primarily focused on creating a genre of memes known as YouTube poops, which is a subgenre of online humor that revolves around taking clips from other shows, usually cartoons, and editing them to have a bizarre, often nonsensical tone. Over time, Benjamin's channel had amassed over 8.7 million views, making him a well-known name in the YTP community. But after his upload on December 21st, 2021, he suddenly vanished from the internet, leaving his fans wondering what could have happened. Unfortunately, the reason for his disappearance was far more tragic than simply getting bored and moving on from the channel, as most of his audience had assumed. The incident took place on the 27th of January 2022, when his older brother Chris tried to contact him many times but didn't hear back. Left with no other option, Chris called the police at around 8 p.m. to check on his parents and little brother. When the officers arrived at his house, the lights were on, but no one was answering the door. After repeated knocks, the officers knew something was off, so they decided to break in. But nothing could have prepared them for the horrific scene they saw behind that door. Inside, they found the bodies of Benjamin and his parents, all with visible gunshot wounds. However, what looked like a robbery gone wrong turned out to be far more tragic. According to the investigation, both Benjamin and his mother Deborah were shot by his father that evening, who, after committing the crime, decided to end things for himself as well. The news of this incident was a massive shock for Benjamin's viewers, as he'd never mentioned any family troubles before. Chris later set up a GoFundMe page in November of 2022, which not only allowed Benjamin's fans to support the only living member of his family, it also gave some insight into what might have happened. According to Chris, Benjamin was born in 2005 and was soon diagnosed with autism. This made it difficult for him to interact with people in person. Because of this, he was homeschooled, and at just 8 years old, he started uploading on YouTube, hoping to make friends and find a sense of community. Sadly, Benjamin's condition was far from the only challenge their family had to face. Deborah was also suffering from nerve damage after an accident, and the father Gregory had also gotten in a car accident in the past and could barely walk. On top of that, the family was also struggling with severe financial issues, which could explain why Gregory felt the need to take such a drastic measure, seemingly out of nowhere. As Chris puts it, "My dad was a proud man. He was ashamed to ask or seek out help." Although Benjamin's content was somewhat niche, it left a big impact on those who came across it, with some even uploading new videos in his style to keep his memory alive.
Now that one's crazy.
Harley Dilly was a YouTube channel.
That one's crazy. That poor boy. He looked like someone as well. He looked like a famous kid, like American kid. I can't think who though. But yeah, Jesus. That's Hollis Brown. If you haven't heard Bob Dylan's Ballad of Hollis Brown, that's literally that song. That's what that is. He can't afford, basically can't afford his family. So he kills them all. He spent his last lone dollar on 7 shotgun shells. 7 shots ring out on a South Dakota farm. Somewhere in the distance, there's 7 new people born. Yeah, crazy. That one's mad. The other boy was like, you asked for it. You want to do dangerous shit, don't be surprised when something. I got like no sympathy for you for getting kidnapped, and it's like you knew what you was getting in for. But that kid, that's tragic, and it's tragic the circumstances as well. That it's like his dad, his dad can't walk. His mum's got nerve damage. He's autistic. It's like everything just stacked against that family, and then a tragic ending. And then again, you got another message in that of men not asking for help. Crazy. You could have just asked for help, and yeah. But yeah, that's part one. Sweet.